Religion has profoundly influenced the sweeping American narrative, perhaps more than any other force in our history, from the time of the indigenous peoples to the present day. The National Museum of American Religion tells the surprising and compelling story of what religion has done to America and what America has done to religion, including the establishment of the revolutionary and indispensable idea of religious freedom as a governing principle in the U.S., inviting all to explore the role of religion in shaping the social, political, economic, and cultural lives of Americans, and thus America itself. Join us for Season 3 of our podcast series, Religion in the American Experience, as we follow scholars and others deep into America's religious history and learn how it can inform and animate us as citizens grappling with complex questions of governance and American purpose in the 21st century. Episodes will be released monthly on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome. This is another episode in the subseries, The Making of Us, Lived Religion in America. For these episodes, we explore what religion has done to everyday Americans. They remind us that while religion does very much influence events and the workings of society at large, religion's primary work is with an individual. Today, Debbie Johns joins us from Loudoun County, Virginia, to tell us her own religious history. Debbie, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Chris. Glad to be here.
Okay, so Debbie, please tell us a little bit about yourself. You don't have to mention anything about religion previous. We'll get into those questions about your religious history, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in Page County, Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley. In Virginia, my whole family, my mother's side, my father's side, they're all Virginia, many of them First Virginia families. So we're so Virginian, it's, the way it is. I was born August 21st, 1951. My mother was only 17 years old. My father was 21. Grew up there in the valley, mountains all around you. It's just absolutely beautiful. But when you're a child, you think, oh, there's more mountains, But went to high school there, graduated. I didn't have, because in high school, I was really sick at 15. I wasn't able to go right off to school. So I worked for a dentist in our area, great family, and did an apprenticeship program with them. And I worked there for 3 years. And in the meantime, I met Robin, the country girl, and the city boy who moved from Baltimore. And his family moved to the Shenandoah Valley for just a brief period, like 3 or 4 years. There's only 2 high schools in the area, right? So we went to different schools, but we both were guys that we were Catholics. And that's how we met. And so his beginning of his senior year at Virginia Tech, we got married. And I went to Blacksburg. I got a job and also got accepted at Tech, and we did a study abroad program. And he was doing some graduate classes. We were married in 72. And he graduated in 73. We're doing graduate classes, and I got sick again. So we moved back to the Shenandoah Valley, but he got a job, and things were not good, but things were not bad because of some events in religion that happened to us that put us on a really good path. And I did get better. We went on to have 6 children. We have 14 grandchildren, and very blessed.
Okay.
So we've been in Loudoun County. We moved to Loudoun County in 1978, and we've now been married almost 52 years. And so Loudoun County 78, we started, Robin was a social worker, and we started home for we had the first home for adults in Loudoun County. And we did that for a little over 25 years. And then I had the privilege while raising my family. Teachers at school needed help with daycare. So I had the privilege of raising a lot of other children with my children. And I consider that a really great blessing too. And then now we're still raising children. So we have grandchildren and a special needs autistic grandson that we help. So that's me.
That's you. That's a great description of you. Thank you for that. That helps our listeners understand sort of who you are and where you're coming from. So, Debbie, tell us about your parents, specifically about their religious beliefs and religious sentiments. What were the religions of your parents?
My mother really, my mother's mother, was raised in a home where her grandmother was very religious, but she died very young, like in her 40s. But she had 11 children. And a Church of the Brethren, and in the Shenandoah Valley, that's huge. And so my grandmother, my mother's mother, she lost her mother, a baby, and her husband within a year. She didn't not believe, she just couldn't let herself believe. It was so hurtful for her. So when my mother was a teenager, she started exploring religion. And she was baptized in a Pentecostal church and talked about the elders laying on of hands and baptized in the river. And my mother read the scriptures every day, was very, very religious, found great comfort in them. Because she had lost her father, she never knew her father. Her mother was 5 months pregnant with her when he was killed. And so she always had a need of searching, and she found comfort in the scriptures. Now, my dad's side, they were super religious. My great-grandfather in 1945 bought a tract of land. It was a little church that went up for auction. And in 1945, he was able to purchase that for $271, which was a lot of money right there during the Depression time.
Right.
And he set up a board of trustees, and they had all come from Pennsylvania. And they had been in the county. The county itself was established in 1812. Page County, 1831, but Luray was 1812. And they had been in that area, but they came. Page County is comprised of Shenandoah County and Rockingham County. So they took portions of both and made this new county. So a lot of people migrated there because it was exciting. It was a new area. And very, very old-time Dunkards. I always grew up thinking that we came from that part in Germany in 1700s, and we do have family from there, that started the Dunkard Church, which was, they were part of the Anabaptist. It means to be rebaptized. They didn't just do sprinkling, they baptized you 3 times, dunked you down. That's why they call you Dunkards. But actually, it turns out that they came over with William Penn. They were Quakers. And as they migrated down, Roland, my 9th great-grandfather, was a Quaker minister. And I think they had like 15 children. They migrated down to Frederick County, which is Winchester area. And it never really, I guess it didn't work because they went from there to Ohio. And he started the first Quaker meeting houses in Ohio, all through the Appalachian So, I mean, you want to talk religion, we can talk religion from now forever. Um, but because of the Dunkard Church, my mother found them to be very strict. Uh, the way she was raised, of course, she was raised, um, no makeup, you're very plain, you're very humble. Both sides, the brethren, they nonviolence. Um, when during the Confederacy, when some of them were called to war, they would not fight. So it was Stonewall Jackson who knew the Dunkards in the area in the valley, and he said, instead of putting them in front of a firing squad, which is what they were going to do, they put them in the stables and they gave them nonviolent jobs. And my great grandfather's brother, youngest brother Frank, was called to World War I, and he did not want to fight. I will serve, he said, but I will not fight. And they were ready to get rid of him too. And then finally, some other people stepped up and gave him jobs that did not involve fighting. So we're talking about they weren't. They would not own slaves. They did not believe in owning another human being. Very focused on Christ. Very the teachings of Christ was everything. Everywhere, every house, everybody had a picture of the Savior at the crucifixion and the Last Supper.
Was this the Dunkards on your dad's
the
side
Dunkard,
or
the
Dunkards?
Dunkards?
Okay.
Yeah, no, the Dunkards, my mom's side. But my mom said when you'd go, because when we were smaller, we did not go to the church for the brethren because there wasn't a place for children. Now we had Sunday school, but it was the men sat on one side and the women sat on the other, and they had their little white caps, and it was a patriarchal order. The men ran the meetings, and it was all fine and good. My mother didn't disagree with that, and she taught Bible school there at that church, Mount Zion, every summer. So Bible school was for the kids, but it was up to the parents to teach the children at home. It was their responsibility.
So thank you for that background of your parents' religions. So how did your home when you were young look and behave religiously? Paint us a picture of what your life was when you were young religiously, both in home and then outside in church, etc.
Well, because of my father's circumstances, he was born into my great-grandfather. They raised 7 boys and 5 girls. And when my father's mother, Marie, got pregnant out of wedlock, my great-grandparents didn't know she was pregnant. And her sisters helped her hide it. Well, when she became sick, and she, on July 4th, 1930, turned 16. He was born August 15th, 1930. They didn't know what was wrong with her. And then when they found out it was too late, she had preeclampsia and she died. And it rocked the family. My great-grandmother, they said she wouldn't release the body. She was couldn't believe herself that she did not know what was wrong with her own daughter. But they didn't believe it because they had raised this family, and their family was everything. I mean, that's what they worked for. That's what they lived for. And then she's gone, and my great-grandfather, I never saw him angry. I never saw him raise his voice, but they said he was devastated. And no one knew who the father was, and no one ever found out. They raised my father. Um, he was 10 years younger than their last child. But consequently, so religious and so many different people and so many different opinions. My father grew up knowing how he was born and into the circumstances, and it highly affected him. And my father turned out to be an alcoholic. Now, my mother was convinced that she could be his support. When they first married, he wasn't. It was all great and good and wonderful. And I can remember being 5 and 6 years old and everything in the home was still good. I mean, church and focus and scriptures. But I guess as life gets harder and he had his own children, he couldn't fathom what had happened to him, and he never really accepted it. He was 63 when he finally died, and I was so happy for that day because I felt like he was finally released from this earthly burden that he carried. You know, my mother died giving birth to me. I don't even know who my father is. And I felt like then that was his time that he could move forward and start to progress and things could be corrected on the other side because not everything can be corrected here.
Uh,
And I grew up knowing that. And that was a good lesson, hard one, but a good one.
that's very poignant. Thank you for sharing that very personal story. Was he so in the home when you were young? How did your mother lead out on religious things, or what was your dad's? How did your dad live his religion, and how did they live their religion in the home when you were young? Was there Bible reading? Was there prayer? Was it less than that? Was she the leader? Was he the leader? Tell us a little bit about the dynamics of how that looked before he
Well,
passed away.
my mother was the leader of, I mean, my father had been raised in a very religious situation. So he knew the scriptures, particularly the New Testament. I mean, that's what their focus was on. Uh, and in the Brethren Church, there's no stained glass windows. It's just simple little square windows in a white building. There is no lavish anything. It's all simply focused. There's a big table, no pulpit. There's a table with the scriptures in the middle. It's all about the scriptures. My father knew the scriptures really well. He would quote scriptures. He prayed. My mother read the scriptures every day, every night. She read the scriptures to us. We said prayers every night. Um, it, my father, the drinking would be angry and there was abuse. But my mother would always, and the thing is, no one knew what to do about it because the Dunkers didn't allow drinking and gambling, and they didn't allow anything like that. So my great grandfather, and he was alive up until I was almost 10 years old. He could calm him down. He could talk to him. But then after he died, it really got bad because he had no one yet. His two aunts were really close to him. They would have been Marie's my grandmother, sisters. But he always had so many questions, and he always had so many. He couldn't handle a death, a funeral, a wedding, anything like that was just like too much for him to handle. And so it would be a very hard time at home. But my mother would gather us and we would sit on the sofa. She'd read us the scriptures and she would calm us down. And she would teach us that no matter what's happening, that the Lord loves us and is aware of us. And would take care of us. And we knew that. We didn't always know how. But that is why no matter what in life somebody can throw at me, I know that my belief is in Jesus Christ because of the way I was raised. Because I can't always focus and depend on man to do the right thing, or woman.
Right. Okay.
So those trials, it was hard, but we
Sure.
did have. My mother was the one. I have her Bible. It's so marked up. She marked scriptures. The book of Revelations. Yeah.
Right.
And she quoted scriptures. I mean, in Psalms 23, I could tell you all her favorite scriptures.
So the 23rd Psalm is one of her favorites.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
23rd Psalm, is that one of her?
Oh, yes.
favorites?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
She would read that to you.
Oh, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Right.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We all knew it by heart.
And what was so growing up, elementary school age, church every Sunday? Is that accurate? Are we
Just about.
Just about.
Just about. Just about.
And you had
If our
siblings?
dad didn't take us, I have a brother who's 11 months younger than I am.
Okay.
And then I have a sister who's 6 years younger.
Okay. So every Sunday, basically church.
To Sunday school. Yeah. And then when we went to Mount Zion, and that was a church. When my grandfather bought that and set up the board of trustees, they called it the Gokenauers Church of the Brethren, but then later it was changed to Mount Zion. Then they started a little satellite church that was about maybe just 5 or 6 miles around closer, that we went to. And there it was more, the minister was more friendly to children, and we had like a children's story. And so every Sunday we'd go up and we'd sit and listen to a children's story. I loved it because it was like, whoa, we get to come into the church and we get to be here,
Right. Okay.
We also had in elementary school, and I was trying to remember the other day, and I don't think it was weekly, but at least every 2 weeks, we had Bible study in our classrooms. The missionaries or whoever they were that focused on that area would come in, and we always had a lesson. And that's where I learned John 3:16. And so we had, and I was trying to remember, I think we had prayer in the school. I know we did the Pledge of Allegiance every day. So, I mean, we're in a community where it is all about religion, and God is spoken of commonly.
Right.
No one's ashamed to speak of the Lord.
Right. So now let's move into middle school age. How did religion influence you in those years? And tell our listeners, when did your dad pass away as far as your age? How old were you when he passed?
When my dad?
When your dad?
Were you? I was married and had children.
So he's still there. Okay. In middle school. He's
all through. Yeah.
Okay.
He's there in high school. He never attended my high school graduation because he had other things to do. But my mother was there, and my sister.
Okay.
Middle school
years.
Well, we all went to high school when I started first grade up to 12. Then when I was about the 6th grade, we built another school. So the 1st through 7th or 8th went to the new school. And then when I was back in the 9th, I went back to the high school, which is, you could just walk the distance between the two. we continued to go to church. In fact, it was a 5-year period in there that my dad actually didn't drink. And we went to church every Sunday. We went to church during the week for Bible study. Um, and it was wonderful. It was great. Um, but I got sick at 15 and was put in Charlottesville Hospital for 6 weeks. And my dad had been struggling before that, um, starting to drink again. But I think that really kind of put him over the edge. I had a lung disease, bronchiectasis. I didn't know how sick I was until I was 20 and ready. Robin had asked me if we, to get married. I knew that all of a sudden I didn't do PE much anymore. I had played volleyball, didn't play volleyball anymore. My brother was really a great baseball player. And I'd go to his games and I would go, this isn't fair. This isn't fair. It's okay. It's okay. You just got to get stronger. And every 6 months I went to Charlottesville to the doctor. And again, just do what they tell you to do, right? Whatever I did. Because obedience, we were taught to be obedient. And that's what we did. And so my dad really started drinking really bad again. And things really got bad at home. And I remember one time I was about 16 and I walked out of the house and lived on a country road. And from my house to up to where my great grandfather would have lived, his house, about a couple miles. And I just started walking. And I thought, I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I just need to figure out what's going on. And our minister and another factor too, and another thing, my dad got really close to our minister. Owen Preston was our minister. And then Owen Preston, after a couple of years, got transferred. And that affected my father. And so I'm walking, and along comes this car. And Owen Preston was back in the area visiting people. Debbie, what are you doing? I knew that the Lord was looking after me. And I told him, I said, it's been a little tough at home. And he took me back home and talked to Dad. And, it's all, how do you know when things aren't right? It's the way they're supposed to be, but yet there's so much good that you take out of that. Because I knew, was it right what was happening at home? But then my mother, we'd read the scriptures and you'd feel, okay, it's all right. Was it dysfunctional? Probably. But again, like I said, the faith, I didn't put my faith in individuals. I put my faith in the Lord. And so by the time I was 18, when I had graduated high school and I worked at the Caverns for a couple summers, and that's where Robin and I met. But just, got to know each other. Right. And then the summer after high school, he was at the Caverns because I was working for Dr. Lutz at that time, the dentist. And he was big in community service. So we were doing Kiwanis and JC booths. And of course, I'm working the booths, right? And anyway, I'm there and Robin comes by and, well, we just kind of started talking.
Okay.
But they were wonderful people. Uh, my mother got really sick. She had a breakdown, and they took my sister and myself in. Um,
They being
we,
Robin's family?
no,
Oh, you said they were
no.
really good people.
Well, I'm sorry. The doctor's
The
family.
doctor. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, they had 5 children, and oh well, I put my mother in the hospital, and so uh, it was just something that had to be done for my mother's sake, and I think she had taken all she could take during the course of that time too. And but again, her scriptures went with her, and we went to the Lutheran church with the family, the Dr. Lutz's family.
Okay.
I found it very different because I didn't know how to recite prayers, and I didn't know how to because we just prayed vocally. I found it very interesting and very different because and I also had a cousin who was a Baptist, and she took me to her church a lot. So I continued to go to church.
Okay.
Um, so
And this was right after this is about high school graduation time
yes,
that you're describing. Okay. So you're still going to church, different churches, your mom in the hospital,
yeah.
meet Robin. So tell us, so then you go to the university, or tell us now what happens and how religion is intertwined into the next few years of your life.
Um, well, when Robin and I were ready, because he was at Virginia Tech, he had already finished his freshman year when we met back at the fair. And so we dated for a year and a half, and we got engaged. Well, that's when I talked to my family, and my mother said, "Well, you can't get married. You only had 5 years to live when you were 15." So I didn't realize that. And I thought, oh. So I told Robin, I said, "Forget this. I don't know what's happening because I'm 20."
Oh, I see.
And
So you had not
and
heard,
he,
you had not heard that you had 5 years to live when you were 15. Your mom just told you that?
oh no, I didn't know when I was when
Okay.
Robin we were talking about getting married. No, I had no idea. I knew I was sick, but I
Right.
went back to school. When I went back to school, it was really funny. In my sophomore year, when I went back to school, there was like 12 or so people around my locker. They all thought I had died. I mean, I was in the hospital for 6 weeks. Anyway, so Robin, very calm, Robin, my husband, Robin just said, "Well, why don't we just go visit your doctors in Charlottesville and let's see what they have to say and talk to them on our terms?" And I thought, okay. So we went back, and the doctor that I had been seeing all those years, Dr. Grant, very nice older guy, he said, "I can't tell you, but bronchiectasis is a degenerate type disease. Your lungs, half of your left lung is gone, and I don't know how long you have, but why don't you just live life?" Well, of course, that just opened the door up for Rob and John. So he just said, "Okay, we're getting married." Um, so then everything, he had been baptized into the Episcopal Church when he still lived in Maryland, but they really didn't go to church very much, once in a while. And then when they came to the Shenandoah Valley, they went to some kind of a different non-denominational something.
Okay.
So he said, "We need a place to get married, right? Okay, we're going to be married in a church. We need." And so we talked to different ministers in the area, and we found this one that we really liked, Reverend Blaine Blueball, and he was the minister of the Methodist Church. And we had several meetings with him. We told him flat out what our situation was. um, we wanted to know when we would die, would we know each other in heaven as husband and wife? And he couldn't, once we were married, because we were not married yet. We were looking for somebody to marry us.
Right.
And he said, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you'll just be happy. Just everybody's going to be happy. You'll be okay. Well, Robin wanted to know, okay, well, can you take out of the marriage vows till death do us part? Well, Robin, it's just part of the ceremony. It's just part of the phrases that we use. It's really beautiful. So we really liked him, and so we went with the Methodist Church. And people were very warm and inviting, and I knew a lot of them from the dental office already. And so we joined the church there, and Blaine married us, and we went off to Virginia Tech for a year.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Let me ask you a question before you move on to Virginia Tech. So did you feel, so it sounds like Robin wasn't super religious. I mean, he was, but it wasn't a huge driver like it had been in your life. When
Right.
you talked marriage, went to find the right minister, did you feel inwardly a pull to the church where you grew up, that religious tradition?
To the Church of the Brethren?
Yes.
Robin and I talked about that the other night. I didn't, because I think I had so many questions of, everybody knew we were struggling at my house, and they all knew, why didn't someone help us? Nobody knew what to do. So I really wasn't angry or bitter towards them, but it was like, why didn't someone help us? But frankly, no one knew what to do, right? So I regret now that I should have been married in that little church. Yeah, I do. Because I've done my genealogy and I look at them all differently. And I understand them now as an adult a lot better. But for at that time, and had the other minister been there that we were really close to, grew up with, that would have been another factor.
Right.
Because, in the paid ministry, they come and go, and they go on assignments. They go where they're told.
Right.
So,
okay.
Anyway,
that makes
that's
sense.
Right.
Okay, so take us to Virginia Tech, young, married, and what was your religious life like at this point? What did it look like?
Okay. We did not go to church there. We never really got established in the church. And then one Saturday, I was working, and Robin was at the apartment and knocked at the door. And he opened the door, and there were two elders from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, missionaries. And he started talking to them, and they were nice guys. And we, in the meantime, now kept very close touch with Reverend Blueball. And every time we went home to visit, we went to church there. So we maintained our home church back there.
Right.
But not at Blacksburg. And so when I got home, he had already made an appointment. These guys are coming by, and they're great. And we, just talk to them, because we had really been talking a lot about religion and what's going to happen after death, because it was almost a reality for us. It was like smack dab in your face. We're only 21 years old, but this is possibly a potential thing that might be happening,
Right.
sooner
Okay.
than later.
Yeah.
So anyway, they came, and we had great discussions. And the first question we asked them was, I don't know how involved in religion you want to get, but this is real for us.
whatever you need to, whatever you want to say
Would
about your
we,
religious life, you bet.
okay, would we know each other after we died? Well, they put away their flip charts at lesson discussions, and they said yes, and they taught us about temples and ceilings and families, and they taught us so many things. And then one night we thought, oh, we have to talk to Reverend Bluebell about this. Because in my history book, the only thing I knew about the Mormons, what they crossed the plains. Robin knew nothing about the church, the LDS church. So we called Brother Blueball up, Reverend Blueball. We said, Reverend Blueball, what do you know about these guys? They got some really good answers for us. And he was so wonderful, because had he told us to say no to them, we would have listened. He said, they are just super nice people. And they're just young men away from home, and they believe in Jesus Christ. And he told us that. And he said, so invite them in for dinner. It'll be fine. We did. So that went through. We were to be baptized August 10th. And I got sick again in June and July. And Charlottesville wanted to put me back in the hospital the 1st of August for 3 days for some tests. And I was there 19 days. But the wonderful thing was, when we were on the elevator going into the hospital, there were these 2 guys with these little name tags on from the church. And we thought, wow, you're from that church we've been taking these lessons from. Oh, yeah, the missionaries in Blacksburg contacted us and said you'd be here. And they brought us peaches. They came every day to visit us. It was a really interesting experience there at the hospital. I was on a floor where the mortality rate wasn't very good, like 68% or something. You don't get off of the floor. You don't know that until later, right? I mean,
Right.
but there was a person in a room next to me that was a young father dying of leukemia. I mean, you hear people coming back and forth, and his wife would be crying. And his minister had come by to see them. And because the man had never been baptized before, he told him he was going to be going to hell, that it wasn't anything he could do for him. And of course, when Robin heard that out in the hallway, he came running in. And next time the elders came, he goes, elders, what do you say to that? And they went over and talked to that family, and they taught that family. And we hadn't even been baptized yet. But it was like, all of a sudden, we had answers. We had answers to these questions that no one could give us any substantial information on. But we had faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. And to know that he had made a way for these things to be answered was easy for us to believe.
Right. Wow.
Time's almost up. I'm sorry.
No, it's getting there. These have been wonderful, wonderful stories. We really appreciate you sharing them with all of us, our listeners, wherever they are. These are deeply personal, and so we appreciate you sort of offering up your vulnerability in this way to sort of help us understand what religion has done to you in your life and for you. Maybe briefly, and then I'll ask the final question. Tell us what happens. Obviously, you lived. It sounds like the baptism went off as planned, perhaps, maybe a little bit later.
Mm-hmm.
No. Tell us a little bit
later
of joining the church, and then how, briefly, because the time is short, how religion played into you with children, and then we'll ask the last question.
Well, after we left, after I got out of the hospital, we had to move from Blacksburg because I was really, I had only partial vision in one eye and I could barely walk. So the bronchiectasis was still progressing, but now they thought I had MS. So we went back to my hometowns where family and people could help. In the meantime, the Methodist people met us there and they were very nice. But then one night my sister called and said, Debbie, there's two sisters from the church and I gave them your address. I hope it's okay. I said, oh yeah, they've been coming by anyway. Well, it was two LDS sisters. We had never met sisters before, so we didn't even know that they existed. Anyway, they set up, they asked us, they invited us. They came in, it was a Friday night. They asked us to attend the meeting Sunday. And we had looked for a church in the Harrisonburg area, but this was in Front Royal. See, the church was growing from the DC area in to the valley.
Okay.
And we thought, okay, so we went to church and then they said, well, we're having a baptism tomorrow or the following Saturday. We're having a baptism the following Saturday. Would you like to attend it? And Robin says, no, we want to be baptized. And that was wonderful. And we went, we met the branch president the next day, Sunday, interviewed that week, and we were baptized that following Saturday. And then a year later, we went to the temple and we were sealed. And I had special priesthood blessings. And so I was told I'd never have children. And so I was really stressed about that. And the Lord took care of that too. So we had 6 children. I had no complications. I haven't been sick since. My health, when they look in my eye, I still have MS, according to what happened to my optic nerve, but obviously I don't have MS. The Lord has taken care of it all. So, and I know these things. He's never forsaken us. So,
Thank you for all of that.
It's a lot. I'm sorry.
Well, don't apologize. This is why we do these lived religion interviews. These are real and an important part of the religious fabric of the country, which is the historical religious fabric of the country, bringing us up to today. So no apologies. This is exactly what we are looking for. One sentence, 2 sentences about, and then the last question about how religion helped you as a parent. I think you said you had 5, 6 children.
6.
What was the role?
Everything, every Sunday. They were raised in the gospel. They were raised to love the Lord. It helped me. I had to go to the scriptures. Just as my mother did. I went to the scriptures to help in how to raise my children. I attended my meetings so I could learn. I picked out a couple of different sisters, older sisters that I wanted to be like as a mother. It's all of it. And I would go back to the valley and I would go back to the cemetery where there's 4 generations of my family there. And they were all good mothers. And I knew they were good mothers. My mother was a good mother. And I knew I could be a good mother. I just wanted to make sure I did it right. And I took something from all of those things and made me.
So you have a very, very rich religious history. Maybe for our listeners, summarize it. This will be the last question. Summarize, if you can, as we look at you young to this point, several different faiths and denominations are interwoven in this, right?
Absolutely.
Tell us in summary, how has religion affected you from the beginning to now? What has it done for you? How would you explain that in brief?
Made me into the person that I am. Molded everything, every fiber of who I am, and everything that I have projected, how I care for my family, how I I love my Savior, how I treat my body, how I think, how I will not let my thoughts go, or how I will not watch certain things. It's everything. It's who I am. Um, it's not a matter of what I was made to be, but what I chose from those things to be. And I work on that constantly every day. And the most important possession that I have is my temple recommend, because that means my family will always be my family. So uh, religion is everything to me. And it gave me my life, because priesthood blessings, without those priesthood blessings, I, without any of that, I would have had nothing, no future.
Okay, thank you for that summary.
Does that help you? I don't know. Is that what
helps
you're looking for?
That helps our listeners, absolutely. Can you define two things? You said something twice now, and many of our listeners won't know what that is. You mentioned a priesthood blessing, and you mentioned something called a temple recommend. That seemed very important. Explain to our listeners those two things, please, and then we'll close.
Based on an individual's faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ, you can ask for a priesthood blessing of healing and comfort. And they, when we first joined the church, the elder sat us down and we talked about that. And the branch president told us, and he said that by the laying on of hands, anointing with the oil, a blessing can be administered, and they are just the mouthpiece of the Lord. The blessing comes directly from the Lord. I had two special priesthood blessings, and I also had where the ward or the branch fasted and all prayed for me. And I did get better. And it was a slow process. It took me a couple months, but slowly I gained. I went from 98 pounds. I was starting to walk again. I was starting to get healthier. And each time I was blessed that if I would listen softly and carefully to my husband and to what the desires of my heart were, that I would be blessed with those things.
Okay.
And I did. A temple recommend is something that we, as members of the church, we have the privilege of obeying the commandments and living the gospel that we receive every 2 years through interview to be eligible to go into the temple and there to become closer to the Savior. And their families can be sealed together forever.
Okay. And then you also mentioned in these explanations a branch president. What's a branch and what's a branch president?
Small. We now meet in big wards. Wards are like 250 people or so. We were just in the mission field back in Front Royal at that time. The little branch was just organized like a satellite, let's say that, from Winchester. And that was a little satellite church that Winchester started in Front Royal. And we actually didn't have a building. We met in the Seventh-day Adventist church. So they didn't need it on Sunday. So
a branch is a small congregation, like a church planted.
A small group, a small satellite of the LDS church.
And the branch president is the pastor or the spiritual leader
He's
of that
the head.
small congregation. Okay.
Right. But it's not a paid ministry at all.
Okay.
They're all volunteers.
Well, thank you, Debbie. The hour is gone. We have been talking with Debbie Johns of Loudoun County, Virginia, who has told us of her own religious history, which is deep and rich and long, and has been very, very fascinating and wonderful to hear. We are so grateful that you joined us. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you very much.
The podcast series Religion in the American Experience is a project of the National Museum of American Religion. Episodes will be released monthly on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.